Hello everyone, my name is TCG, and today we are going to be talking about the new and updated ban list that was released by Bandai today, earlier from Worlds. They did announce a few cards that are gonna get banned, which are the Great Eruption card Reject, and Sakazuki has officially been banned and has been replaced by the promo. Voidy Century had released a post here regarding how, disastrous this new promo is. This is the first post I found here, and basically Sakazuki will now be reprinted into a promo, which is absolutely disgustingly bad. It went from having two effects which were insanely problematic. The fact that you can have a free cycle in your hand, and when you attack for free you get to -1 cost something, was just too good to be left unchecked, alongside with the package that is run with Sakazuki. I kind of now understand why they kind of banned the leader instead, because if you ban the cards themselves, you would impact other decks which can flourish once Sakazuki is gone, and this is just overall better in my opinion. So the new Sakazuki is 4 life and 5 power, like the other one was. The difference here is now for activate main, once per turn, you may discard 1 card from your hand with type Navy, and you can give up to one of your opponent's characters -1 cost for the turn, which begs the question, how will the meta be affected now? For this video, I decided to create a tier list of what I predict will be the new meta and how it might shape up now. This is completely theoretical, we don't know what's gonna happen yet. This hasn't even been announced for Japan, for EU and NA as of yet. This is strictly a Japan ban list only. I went ahead and tried to think up what the meta might look like. I will only be talking about decks up until some of the B tier, because this would be a very long video and I don't know much about the other lower placed decks, and I wouldn't be able to give you an actual viable opinion based on these decks, and I don't think it would be fair on me if I gave you wrong opinions on what the decks are. So for example, I haven't played Rob Lucci enough to tell you what the problem is, and I can't really tell you, for example, what Sabo needs and what Kinemon needs, So going into this, I have decided to give you a little bit of a list here on what I think that the decks would look like and what the placements are going to be. So I'll just get right into it here. NL is arguably going to be the best deck in the format now. He has just so much sustain, and he checks a lot of the decks that are going to be within the top end of the meta, checking decks like Zoro and Red Purple Law, and even other decks such as RG Law perhaps. I think it's just going to have a very good advantage, and I think it will kind of reign supreme over this meta. I don't think there's pretty much anything else to say. I do think it will take a bit of a hit if this lands in EU and NA as well, in the sense of NL losing Reject and OPO6, but I don't think it would matter that much, in my honest opinion, but I do think it will impact him greatly for sure. Next up, we have the S tier here. The S tier, I have decided to go with Karakuri, Moira, Green Yellow Yamato, Green Black Perona, and Red Green Law. All of these decks are what I would think would be one of the best performing decks now. There's multiple reasons to this, but no doubt I think that Karakuri will be one of the second best leader in this meta, just because of the types of decks that will arise now. Will definitely make him still one of the more top contender for this meta, for sure. The only problem that he gets now is that red will be slightly more popular, so it really kind of depends on how this meta will shape. If Law ends up being more prevalent, meaning that it will rise to popularity, which I'm very, very sure will happen. I don't have any doubt in my mind that this will happen. And Zoro will also rise in popularity, meaning that Katakuri will definitely have hard matchups to go through still. It's just that his biggest wall is now no longer existing. The other good thing with Katakuri is that with the upcoming ban list, he hasn't really been touched. Going to OP06, we'll have now 2 Thunderbolts. We will have the Zoro Thunderbolt and the Nami Thunderbolt with Orbanish, which is really good. He will definitely have some new cards to play with for sure. We will just need to wait for EU and NA to get their Zoros, but once that happens, I do definitely think he'll get bumped up quite a bit. So Moira is also one of the more top contenders of the deck, of the tier list. I'm sorry about that. Is arguably one of the best decks in the format still. Although it does look great, lose Great Eruption, there's little to no difference in what it would look like in our meta. So obviously Moira, 8-cost Moira is still going to be one of her bigger issues in the deck. However, it depends on the certain matchups, because if you get pressed enough, I don't think 8-cost Moira will turn the tide that much. It's really hard to say when we haven't actually had time to properly test it out yet, whereas we've seen the Japan meta being able to cover and play the entirety of the meta as well. So I do think still, although he will lose Great Eruption, I do think he will be a good contender going into this meta, and I still urge people who want to try the deck to not be disheartened by the change of the meta that we'll be experiencing. And I do think that Moira is going to be one of the better options going into this. So the next is arguably one of my most favorite decks in the entire OP06 meta, Green Yellow Yamato. Yamato is going to be probably my main deck for this set. It's a double attack leader, which is green and yellow, and when your opponent is at 3 or less life, you can attach 2 Rested Dawn to any of your characters. That is a very good effect, and I do think that Yamato will be definitely one of the best decks in the format. Notably, the Fishman engine and the Wano engine are also one of the best archetypes for this deck. There's also the Fortress type, but I haven't seen it enough to make a decision on it. However, the Fortress type Yamato build does look very promising. I am going to do videos later on the sim with all 3 variations of the deck, because I will want to pump out as much Katakuri and Yamato content in the sim going forward. But Yamato is definitely one of those decks that you should be considering going into the meta, as it's going to be a very prevalent deck in EU and NA. Perona will probably have a better time into this meta now. Perona is a green-black leader, which is going to be one of the newer leaders now. Definitely something that we should not ignore. It is definitely a deck that we will need to learn. So Perona is a green-black 4-life leader that has activate main once per turn. Choose one of the following: rest up to one of your opponents with cost 4 or less, or give up to one of your opponent characters -1 for this turn. This is a very good selection, although from what I'm kind of picking up from testing the OP06 meta on the sim, most of the time they're just gonna rest your shit and try to kill something for sure. So it's basically like a guaranteed EZO a turn, which is very cool. I do like that. It's very interesting. I do think the Supernova engine will be the more popular version of Perona for sure. I don't think that we will probably see anything else other than that one. Well, there will be the Thriller Bark engine as well, but I do think that the Supernova one is a bit better. There's not much for me to say about Perona. The only thing that I will mention is that it will have a better time into the meta now that Sakazuki is banned, and will probably be banned in our meta as well. The deck won't really budge away from S tier just like it was before. Before, I think it was very much on the lower end of S tier rather than basically where it will be in my tier list as well. I think it's a very good deck that you should consider still. It's going to be definitely a menace to play against. And last but not least, we do have Red Green Law. Red Green Law has a lot of potential, being a very big threat now that his hardest check in the metagame is now gone. It will also allow him to basically have a bigger presence in the meta for sure. I did not hesitate, and I don't think I'm exaggerating with the position that he is in now. Red Green Law is definitely going to be a threat to the meta for sure. I don't think it will be like as big of a problem as it was when it was back in OPO4, OPO3 for sure. But I do think that it will start popping up here and there without a doubt in my mind. So with that said, let's head over to the A tier now. A tier, I did think about this quite a bit, and I think that this is where I have settled down on my A tier list. Here we have Zoro, Red Purple Law, Purple Luffy, Blue Nami, Red Whitebeard, Green Uta, and Vinsmoke Reiju, which is a blue-purple leader. So I think that I didn't put Zoro in the S tier just because of the sustain game that he will have, the bad matchup that he has into NL, and the bad matchup that he has into Moria. If the Moria player is good, I do feel like Zoro will struggle against this. So I thought that it's infinitely harder for him nowadays, because back in OPO4, OPO3, they never really had a deck that kind of stopped them, in a sense that there was always something that Zoro could crush through. And back when NL and Sakazuki were arguably the best decks in meta, he just couldn't shine as much as he should have. This also applies to Law as well. But I do think that now that they're gone, these decks are going to show up more than they are going to compared to OPO5. The only downside that I do see here is that with OPO6 coming out and a lot of new decks are getting like support for them, Zoro is kind of a forgotten child in this meta, where he doesn't really have a lot of things. He does get like kind of raise Max instead of Gordon, I guess, which does the same thing, so I guess it's just a cheaper alternative to Gordon. But that's pretty much it. I don't think there's anything else I could say. I think we'll definitely see Zoro slipping into top cut and higher end placings for sure now that his biggest threat is gone. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it. The next deck I have up now is Red Purple Law. Red Purple Law is going to be one of the rising decks in popularity for sure. No doubt in my mind now that basically it opens up a whole new avenue for him. It also has a lot of new support coming out for it. The Raise Max and Shiraya is also going to be added into the set, and these are very popular and good cards for Red Purple Law. When I do think that we will see him pop up more here and there now. I'm saying this with a lot of confidence. The cards do add a lot of support to the deck, and I will definitely think we will see more Red Purple Law, without a doubt in my mind. Next up we have Purple Luffy. Purple Luffy finally gets to breathe a sigh of relief as his Arch Nemesis is finally gone. Yes, I know that Sakazuki is going to be a hot topic in this deck, I am aware, but this kind of video that centers around it, so I try to orient everything around Sakazuki being gone. So yeah, although Luffy does get to breathe a sigh of relief as finally Sakazuki has been sent to the Shadow Realm, hopefully to never see the light of day. The thing with Purple Luffy, and the reason why he's an A tier now, is that he doesn't get much support either. Although now that Sakazuki is gone, I do think that he is very much still a threat. Although it also like checks Whitebeard as well and other decks as well, like Nell. Depends on obviously like how the NL player finds life, and this also applies to all the yellow decks, right? I do think that Purple Luffy will definitely take a hit in the sense of him having no real support and going into OPO6. He will still pretty much have a face in this meta as well. The only problem is that he will now see more Zoros in Red Green Law and even Yamato, which are basically nightmares for the deck. So that's why I kind of didn't put him in the A tier. But obviously, the best in deck and format in OPO5 is no longer there. So obviously, this is something that he will enjoy seeing. Next up is Nami. Nami is a tricky one, I would like to say, which kind of bounces off into what I said earlier. Just to reference is now that bottom decking would be less prevalent. Kaya's and other cards like Zeph and stuff like that aren't going to be bottom decked anymore like every turn. So he does have it does have more leeway to work with, and it definitely is going to be a more viable option to pick. The only downside to this is that red decks and yellow decks are going to be more prevalent, meaning that Nami will definitely have a harder time into the meta, but that doesn't mean that it can't perform well. Far from it. I do think that Blue Nami is going to be one of the best decks out there. I just don't think it will do as consistent now that red decks are basically coming back into the game a little bit. So that's kind of my take on it. It does see a new card, which I will show up here on screen. I do think that this will get integrated into Nami decks going in the future, and I'm very curious to see what the deck is going to change. I do have Nami myself, and I do enjoy playing her from time to time, so it's definitely something that I will be looking into trying to incorporate in the deck as well. And that's pretty much it for Nami. Heading into the old pops, Whitebeard pretty much stays the same way it has for God knows how many sets. It doesn't have any new cards that will be likely added into the deck. Although EBO1 does look promising for Whitebeard, I don't think that OPO6 will see much of Whitebeard, just as because of power creep that's been happening around the game. With the upcoming set, I don't think that we'll see Whitebeard a lot. Although it would be very interesting to see how he plays into the meta now that Sakazuki is gone. I don't think that we'll even see him with Sakazuki being on. I could be very wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't want him to be a fucking threat like he was before. So that's very good to see. I did put Whitebeard in the lower end of the tier just because of the power creep, like I mentioned, and people decks like Yamato and NL and Zoro just completely check him. Even like Purple Luffy will still have a good matchup into him, and I'm not fully certain about this. Correct me if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments, but I think Green Uta still does well into Whitebeard as well. I could be wrong about that, just because of if he drops like 2 9-drop Whitebeards, I think he's killable. Unless the Green Uta doesn't have like 3 backlights maybe. But I don't know, I think that Whitebeard will still be one of the topper decks. I just don't think we'll see him all that much, but it's still a very good deck to pick at the moment in the meta. Next up, we have Uta. Uta, I'm not fully sure of, as I did not fully research the deck. I don't really know much about the deck that besides it won Japan Nats, and the guy that played it, I think, got 6th in Worlds. But he played Sakazuki, if I'm not mistaken. So the thing with Uta is that the deck is a very, like, when you think of green, I immediately think of Uta. Uta is just basically, in my opinion, the best mono green leader that we have had yet in the game. Is just a very good leader. It does its job and does it well. It doesn't struggle into the problems that other decks had, in my opinion, that are green. But I also feel like it has its own identity, which in the sense that it kind of has this film engine and it fits the theme of the deck and it has all these nice things working out for it. I do see it being a good deck, especially now that Sakazuki is gone. The removal and the thing to go around her 8-drop kid is essentially gone. I do think that this deck has more potential, and I think we will see more of Uta going to OPO6, especially because of the ST12 coming up, where we're gonna get the Draco Mihawk and STC Zoro. If you combine these things with 8-drop kid, and then you get some blockers on the board, and you can safely deploy your Zoro, I cannot imagine a board state like that where you can lose. Obviously, there's going to be a lot, but Uta does a good job of sustaining her board and doing it well. And if she manages to keep her 8-drop kids, that means that probably your blockers are going to be safe as well. So it's just going to be a very good stall deck, in my opinion. Lastly, we have Reiju. Reiju is basically the June version of Red Green Law. It is a very interesting take on what a deck plays like, for sure. I think Reiju and the way Reiju works is a very, very, very fun deck. I do like the way that it works and the way that basically you play lower cost versions of cards and then you trash them to play a bigger version of a card. It's a very niche and fun way to play the game. It is a very good deck, but I don't think it's an S tier worthy deck. I was being a bit generous putting it in A tier, but the skill ceiling and the level of the deck just has a huge jump from all the other B tier decks that it just had to be an A tier deck, in my opinion. The problem, unfortunately, someone has to be the last of any tier, and it just happened to be Reiju. Reiju still has a very interesting effect. By all means, I mean, it card draw is just good in any scenario, right? You want to draw cards, and that's 99% of the time it's going to be a good idea to draw a card, right? I think it's just by far the weakest one we've seen in terms of the A, S, and S plus tier of the decks. Like, I just think, obviously, just to put it into perspective, drawing a card is not as good as having all of your characters gain +1, right? Or you essentially bottom deck something with a 3k and then you play a 4 cost. Like, the value of leaders is just so much better than what Reiju has, but the deck built around Reiju is just very good, and I feel like that kind of earns itself an A tier slot. And if it manages to sustain itself until the late game and you can play down Judge, I don't think you are gonna last. I don't think your opponent is gonna last long if you manage to successfully play Judge into evolving all of your Reiju, Niji, and Yonji and stuff like that. I don't think you can lose if you manage to pull that off, if I'm honest. So, up next we have the B tier / fringe decks. So, just to basically give you a kind of a better insight on what B tier fringe is for me, this is where kind of the decks enter this gray area, and basically rogue decks where they become questionable, and basically these decks don't really have a good chance of ever topping, but they are very fun decks to play for sure. I always support decks having that kind of surprise show up in any tournaments and events. These are still good decks in their own right. I just don't think that they will have a place in this meta, just because of how it is oriented and how the power of the topper decks, right, are. It is for sure fun decks that you can play in your locals and stuff like that. I just don't think that they're going to be it, basically. So in this tier we have Blue Dofi, Black Smoker, Blue Black Rebecca, Black Yellow Mom, Red Ace, Purple Yellow Croc, which I call him Lakers Croc, red purple Luffy, green purple Doffy, green Kid, green blue Rosinante, red yellow Bello Betty, yellow Mom, and blue yellow Queen. So blue Doffy is definitely the good contender for this tier, and I would 100% say that he is probably the best character in this tier out of all the others. It's kind of a hot take, but if he manages to get the support that he needs, and even heading into EBO1, he will definitely have a lot more support, and I do see him being a better deck than where he is at currently. And I don't think that he will stay in the tier that he is in for much longer. I think he will definitely go up for sure. And obviously, his effect on the package that he runs is inherently insane in my opinion. Like the effect for Doffy is just a really nice effect, right? So I do definitely see him coming up soon. So up next, Smoker. Smoker is kind of the forgotten middle child that has finally been given his mom and dad's attention again now that Sakazuki's been banned. For sure he will see more play, as the new one is arguably like the worst leader I've ever seen. I mean, there are worse ones, right? But he's definitely competing for sure. With the next sect having a lot of black support, there is no doubt that in my mind that Smoker will have great time enjoying and benefiting from. I don't think we'll see a lot of Smoker, like competitively wise, but he will definitely see him a lot more play than he would have before, just because of the fact that the new Sakazuki is going to be basically a worse Smoker. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see more of him for sure. Up next is Black Blue Rebecca. Black Blue Rebecca is kind of a hot take in my opinion. I do think that we might be able to see some playability from her, but it kind of depends on how this meta will shift. I don't think we will see much of Rebecca just because of the poor matchup spread that she's gonna have. I could be very wrong, but I don't think so. I don't think we'll see a lot of Rebecca, but she definitely has earned her place back just because of how bad she was getting shut off from Sakazuki and other decks as well, but notably him, because basically if they were gonna race that, she would just not be able to keep up for sure. Up next is Black Yellow Linlin. Black Yellow Linlin is a very fun deck. I wish I could try it IRL. However, I don't have black cards that would go into Black Yellow Mom. So this is the only reason why I haven't tried her out yet, but she does look really fun to play. I really want to play her, but the only problem that we have with Black Yellow Mom is that it's not very tested. At least when I try to find good lists that I actually want to try, there is just nothing I could find. And at events that I've seen her win are all like small events, so it's not really a good basis to work off on, you know. So it's just really iffy, and it looks like a deck that really excels in the late game just because of the raw, fresh like add a life to your life is just a really good effect. I do see her potentially seeing a bit of rise. Like I said again, right? I don't expect to see any of these decks in any regional. I just think that we will definitely see this having potential of showing up, basically. And last but not least, the one leader I want to talk about is Red Ace. Red Ace might be a very good leader to play as a low B tier deck, and I definitely think that he has a very niche place in the meta and might be able to be played into. However, this video does have a lot of speculation in it, because we don't know if obviously this ban list will travel over here like I mentioned before. However, we will just need to wait and see. He doesn't have like a lot of new support coming up for sure, but I do think that he kind of earns his place in the B tier for sure. So that is pretty much it for my side of things. I just wanted to show you the remainder of the tier list. Let me know what you think. I think that from my assumptions of how I did this tier list, I wouldn't change anything from it. I do agree that maybe your guys' opinions may vary for whatever reason that may be, and if you want to talk about it, I will definitely have a discussion with you on the channel, and we can basically go back and forth, and we can discuss. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, but at the end of the day, this is my list, and I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did. Make sure to keep in touch with my future videos, and I hope to see you guys in the next. Thank you very much, and stay awesome.